Hello, this is Javier Hernandez, and welcome to Los Comics TV. So this is like a third in a series of creator commentaries. I'm going to be going through this book of mine, and literally just going page by page and just kind of giving you some behind the scenes information and such. I did two previous ones, which I'll have a link for that. On Days of the Dead, the 2018 El Muerto graphic novel, the complete full origin story / first adventure of the character. And I did a commentary for the Casa del Diablo preview edition. As some of you may know, I'm currently running a Kickstarter for the Casa del Diablo graphic novel, like the full book, 30 pages. You can check out the link for that down below as well. But in 2020, I did a preview edition of the book, which was the first 26 or so pages. So I did a walkthrough of that as well. So you can check both these out in the link there on the playlist, creator commentary playlist. So the third book I'm doing here in a row is El Muerto Origins. This was published earlier this year at the Latino Comics Expo, the convention I co-founded back in 2011. So we had a first live show in 2 or 3 years because of the pandemic shutdown, but our first live show at the Museum of Latin American Art, MOLA, in Long Beach. So I did, this book came out in time, I was able to debut it there, so this was a Latino Comics Expo exclusive edition. So yeah, this cover here, this package is only available there. I have copies obviously left over, but once those are gone, that's it. We won't see this cover again for this book. And so the cover here, it's an homage to DC Comics, probably late 50s, probably mid 60s. I forgot the date. They used to do 80-page giants. I think they did 100-page giants too later, but they had a whole string of 80-page giants. So I saw this one Batman. It was an 80-page Batman. So I just basically, used that as a model. I don't remember what issue number it is, but you just look up 80-page giant Batman, and I'm sure if you flip through them, you'll see like the white background with the pink letters and such. But anyway, so this is a collection of the original classic El Muerto comics collected together for the very first time. And as it says in the back here, this Latino Comics Expo exclusive edition collects Days of the Dead, 1998, the first ever El Muerto comic I did. Dead Forever in 2004. That's a story that came out in El Muerto Mishmash. I'll explain that. And the third one, Dead and Confused, part 1, actually. It came out in 2008. So, ended up kind of redrawing all those issues eventually and decided to, kind of relaunch the whole saga. So, a big chunk of this book a big chunk of Days of the Dead, the graphic novel, is basically these 3 stories. And then the other half of Days of the Dead graphic novel is all new material. Maybe like, the stuff I never finished originally. I know it's convoluted, but trust me, this is the original stuff. So when I say the original books, the very first El Muerto comic, I think I've shown this on the channel. I should be more precious with this. I only have like 3 or 4 copies left of a print run of it was less than 500, maybe 450. I have to find my records, but I know it's less than 500. So in 1998, this is my very first. It's all photocopied. The front, everything, the covers, the interiors. It was done at a copy shop locally, Copy Max in La Habra, if anyone, which they're still up. They're still up and running, believe it or not. So this was done in '98, and then eventually I ran out of these copies, so I decided to reprint the origin story in this new edition. So this has color covers. It's on slick paper. Back covers, back interior covers in color. So it's the same story. This story is from here, but it's king size premiere issue. So I decided to add a couple of things in the back. So that's where it ends. Just like some ads for comics that eventually took me a while to get to. Man Swamp, I did the short story, this character, this stretchy character called Elastico. We never seen him again. My friend Michael Loshinger did a little pin-up cover. This is an homage to a Ghost Rider cover, actually, from the 70s. And, you know, some other stuff, some text pieces and such. Some pin-ups, Steve Butler. Those of you who are Sonic the Hedgehog fans, or remember Scarlet Spider from Marvel's Clone Saga from, was it the 2000s or maybe the 90s? I don't remember. Anyway, so pin-up section and such. So, and then this, so, you know, these are two different issues, but it's basically the same origin story. So then the second El Muerto chapter was a story called Dead Forever, which was included in this Muerto mishmash. This came out in 2004. This was 98. The reprint was 2002. This was 2004. But in those years between this and this, I did some short stories with El Muerto. I did a manga Muerto, El Muerto as a manga character. I'll do a whole video on that in the future. There was a short story, Mad Martian Party. It's a 2-page little gag comic. And then this autobiographical story, El Muerto meets his maker, 2000, which I did it in 2000. But and in one of the stories, Dead Forever was, you know, the actual continuation El Muerto story from the first origin story. And then 2004, 4 years after that, I got back to El Muerto, and that's what this is. So we'll review this in this book. But I want to let you know that this week, when I say I reprints the first 3 books, people get confused like whether it was 4, but these 2 books are basically, it's the same content, at least the main origin story. So 1, 2, 3. So having got that out of the way, let's see what El Muerto Origins is all about. This image is from the comic, but I had colored it for something in color. So I printed it in a grayscale. I just like the image, and I'll talk about it later when we get to that part of the comic. This is signed. So at some convention or something, I signed it for somebody and they forgot to get it. Hopefully they end up getting their, they got a copy before they left. Little bit of intro and, you know, so the reason I made an 80-page giant was when I did the page count of the 3 comics, it was like 70 pages or something. And then I started going, well, if I'm going to have like a text piece before each issue, before each story, and then, you know, the titles and the credits and such, and then like the afterward, it came out to 80 pages right here at the bottom. So that's when it clicked to me like, oh wait, 80 pages, like an 80-page giant. That's why I came up with this 80-page giant, you know, branding, because it came out to exactly 80 pages. The printer I use, they always print some extra blank pages. I'm not sure why. They do that for all their books, but it's 80 pages of content. And so yeah, let's just get started on this book, right? I wanted to make a comic book, but ready or not, I made it anyway. So anyway, it's just trying to tell people, if you have an idea, put it out there. Whether you think you're, you know, the best artist you are at the time, because you never will be the best artist you could be. You're always learning and getting there. So that holds people back a lot from doing something, because they don't think they're ready. They don't think it's good enough. But it's like, oh, I got to get started. So that's what this is. So there's the cover, right? When I showed you El Muerto, Days of the Dead, the numero uno edition. What can I say about that? I just kind of wanted a classic, I don't know, kind of classic Marvel, classic Jack Kirby, you know, Jack Kirby, the king of comics, always drawing gargantuan hands and giant gods and monsters. So thought Mictlantecuhtli's hand, the god of death, rising out of the grave, and there El Muerto, and you know, give a good shot of the costume for the first cover. And this is just a little intro on the actual creation of the character, and you know, my first steps doing it. Oh, I should also mention, so I did another video, and I'll have to put that link here too, where I had the actual original art, you know, the 11 by 17 art pages, which yes, I've kept them all these years, you know, 24 years or whatever it was when I did the video, because this came out in 98. So I did a complete walkthrough of every page, detailing, behind the scenes anecdotes and maybe some of my creative process. So I'll put that link there because it goes over every single page, all 32 pages, whatever this is, 36. So I watched that the other day for myself. So I'm going to try to give you some other information in case you ended up watching the other one. The other one's pretty in-depth. I'm going to try to do a little quicker here. But basically, I came up with this story where I wanted something involving Aztec mythology, Day of the Dead folklore. So I knew he was going to be something that got transformed by an Aztec god of death, actually. And he comes back as this Aztec zombie. So that was like the basic kernel of the idea, right? The little seed from where I grew this whole El Muerto thing. So basically, it just starts off where it's his 21st birthday. Diego de la Muerte, our hero. His birthday's coming up. And I wanted to get him to a Day of the Dead festival. And on his way down there, I was going to have him get in a car accident with a bolt of lightning, hits the car. And it doesn't kill him because he disappears, from the car. And the people think he's either dead or missing or something. But he's gone for a year out of their life. And then he's summoned by the gods. There's two gods in the story, you'll see. So the basic setup of this is how do I get him to that Day of the Dead party by himself? Because it's easier to do a story where I don't have to explain if the characters are all sitting in the same car and he disappears and like they literally know he disappeared. I want a little mystery for the characters about as to what happened. So basically he's going through here and the other friends are all dropping out. They're too busy. One's sick and such. One has to work that night. So that's how it turns out that he goes by himself to the party. I don't want to make him a total loner with no friends. He's got friends, but I think it's happened to all of us. You got something planned and, through just circumstance, everybody drops out for one reason or another through no fault of their own. So that's what that is. Like I mentioned in the other video, I use places I know, Olvera Street here in Los Angeles. In another page, I put the number of the bus line he uses, and someone wrote me back there like, "Oh, I remember. I used to take that bus." So write what you know. Try to incorporate things in your life that are, that you know about or you've experienced, so you can put it in the story, and it gives the story just a little more authenticity, or at least other people comment like, "Oh yeah, I've eaten there. I've seen that, and this and that." So that's always fun to do. So, and of course, when he comes back as El Muerto, he has to have some type of costume. He doesn't make a costume. He's not like a superhero where he gets these powers and somebody in the family gets killed or he wants to avenge somebody, so he needs to assume this superhero identity. I go, no, how would he have a suit already? Well, if he's going to the Day of the Dead festival, he stops by this shop in Olvera Street and he gets a suit made because he's going to a festival and he's going to dress up. So that's how I incorporated him having a costume, right? A suit. So again, yeah. So this guy looks a lot like me, Adam Gomez. He's a comic publisher, and then Diego's friend Evan Esquera is this young comic artist. So this old guy is publishing this guy's work. So it's funny, when I did this book in 1998, I was like 25 years younger, so I made myself in the comic maybe 25 years older or 30 years older. So now when I bring him into the graphic novels, I got to make him 30 older than what I am now, and now that I'm much older, he's going to be much older. But anyway, there's a mystery man that gets introduced in the story, and there he is coming off the bus, checking into the Hoover Hotel, which was literally a place there up on Greenleaf in Uptown Whittier, across from the Whittier Theater, if you know the area. I've never been in there, but it's kind of like a dive hotel. So I figured this guy would just check in for the duration of his visit to the city of Whittier. Again, there's a lot more stuff going on, but it's already in the other commentaries, so I don't want to repeat this because I hope you watch the other one. It's really in depth as to what's going on here and such. Based it on, Whittier High School, that's where I went. The Whittier Cardinals was our logo. And they filmed Back to the Future. The first film, in my high school because they needed like a 1930s looking school when Marty McFly goes back in time to meet his father in high school, something like that. They must have filmed it in the summer after we left because I don't remember ever seeing anything about the filming going on while we were in the classes. So the film came out in 85, I think. So they would have filmed it in 84, which I graduated in 84, so maybe that's why I didn't know anything about it. You know, this is my first comic work I've done, you know, since I was I've done some as a kid, but that was just kid comics. So, you know, it's all about figuring out, you know, the storytelling, right? Your panels, break up the page in panels, and then how you want to show each shot. You know, here's the guy sitting there at the phone. I want to keep him as a mystery, so he's in shadow. Aerial view of the phone. Now it's shot from behind him, and he's in silhouette. And then his boots there as he slips into bed, and he's looking at this picture of Diego, and lights out. So again, comics are about the visual storytelling. That's a big chunk of it. And so it's just, there's no right or wrong way to do it. But you want to pick interesting compositions, make it an interesting narrative. So this is like my first major attempt at doing a whole 36-page comic. So, you know, I look at it now, I'm looking at it now, and there's definitely stuff like, oh yeah, I'm a better drawer today than I was 25 years ago. So, but that's just a fact. That's just a fact of any artist's life, whether you're a musician or a dancer or a comic book artist. So I know a lot of people say they hate to look at the early work. I hear that you hear it a lot from actors and filmmakers and such. But anybody really. But yeah, I look at it and it's like, yeah, there's definitely stuff that would be drawn better, drawn different. But I don't really wince because I mean, that's just what I was 25 years ago, you know. Again, don't let that handicap you from even starting a book. So yeah, that's, you know, I teach comic classes a lot of comic classes, grade school kids, middle school kids, high school kids. And, you know, I always just try to encourage them, draw what you're going to draw. Don't worry about if it's as good as her art or the guy next to you, whatever. Just get it out, get it out. And then the next book, try to learn from whatever mistakes you think you made and try to improve and all that stuff. So, but yeah, it's really interesting, you know, like your first comic work, and it's like you're telling this, you know, kind of detailed story. You have to have character development. You have to have pacing. You got to make sure you're telling the story you want to tell. And, you know, hopefully you want people to follow along with it. So you got to give just enough information where it's clear to people. You know, you don't want to over-explain. Yeah, there's so many things to think about as you're telling the story. And then, you know, I write and draw my own story, so it's a different process than, say, two people. There's a writer, and then there's someone doing the art. They need to collaborate, and they need to communicate really good and such, and the script has to be clear and all that for the artist, and then the artist interprets it. But for me, it's doing all that at the same time. You know, I have a lot of people ask me, like, you know, younger people sometimes, they're just learning, hey, what's more important, the writing or the art? You know, what's the percentage? I go, I don't know. I can't answer that. I don't have it's not literally like 50-50, because there's pages where there's a lot of art and not a lot of text. Maybe there's pages like this, there's no text on this page. So it's just, for me, again, as a single writer-artist, singular voice, it's a story. It's the writing and the art, you know. It's literally the letters, the word balloons, and the art. One is definitely not more important than the other. You know, when people look at a comic, they open it like, well, yeah. If obviously they see art, they can skim it really quick without even reading it. And so they're seeing that there's some type of story going on. So, I mean, the art is probably the first thing people see. But they got to get down and read it. So the writing is very important, right? Your characterizations, you know, the way you're unspooling the story and, you know, giving everybody their own voice and all that. So, yeah, so many different parts to making a comic. So this is my first attempt. And, yeah, so Diego, like I said, he, you know, gets home, he puts on the suit, puts on the face makeup because he's going to a Dia de los Muertos festival, which happens to be his birthday. He's born on November 2nd. Coincidence, right? A guy called Diego de la Muerte, born on Day of the Dead. But it's a comic. I gotta point this out, and I'll admit this. So he gets, he gets dressed up. He gets his keys. There's the flyer for the party. And then he's here about to get in the car. Man, I hope no one sees me in this getup. He gets in the car. A friend of mine, Rody Montijo, when he saw this years ago, like I said, he's 25 years old, just about. He looked at that and he read it. He goes, hey, why would he be saying that? Like, he's getting dressed up. Like, when you get dressed up, you do it because you want to, so you must be happy with what you're looking, what you look like. And I told him, I go, you know what? You're right. You're absolutely right. So I had an incident in, was it middle school, grade school? No, middle school. We used to call it junior high, but middle school. I dressed up in the morning. It was like Halloween, I guess, but I dressed up for school, and it was a Doctor Doom costume. Doctor Doom from Fantastic Four. It wasn't armor. I just literally put on some gray sweats, right? Because he has gray silver armor. Long gray sweatpants, long sleeve gray shirt. And then I put on a green t-shirt. And then I got a green bath towel. I wrapped it around my waist and I, put the belt over it. So if you know Doctor Doom, you can always, okay, that's basically what he looks like. And, on a real cheap level, just sweatpants, a gray sweatsuit, and green t-shirt and a green bath towel. And then for his hood and cape, I just got we happen to have a green bed sheet. So I had, had to wrap it around my neck with a bobby pin or whatever, safety pin on the neck to hold it. It wasn't perfect, but, I had a hoodie, I had a hood and a cape. And then for the mask, it was just a cardboard mask. Cardboard, cut out the eye holes, and I drew the, the Doctor Doom, whatever, the bolts around it and everything. And then I don't know how I fastened it with the tape or a string or something. So I put it on. My friend picked me up. My friend Peter Rojas would always pick me up. Walk to my house, pick me up, and then we'd walk to the school. And he picked me up, and he looked at it. Okay, fine. He knew I was into comics. No big deal. And as we're walking up the street out of my house, I got really self-conscious at that point. I just did. I'm just not. I wasn't as carefree as maybe a lot of other people with the costume. And I go, I feel goofy doing this. Like, it's one thing to do it in your neighborhood at night on Halloween. No one's going to see you. No one's going to know it's you, whatever. But to be there at school all day, I just, I lost my nerve. So I went back in the house. I put on my street clothes, and then we walked to school. So I'm, that I think is why I did that. It was like he got a little self-conscious, but he wouldn't. Not the character the way he is, the way he evolved into, like I said. I mentioned, like, it's your first book drawing, so the art's going to be off and wonky and stuff. But you know what? So is your writing, so is your characterization. Because you are still learning the character. You're still figuring him out, even though you have a pretty good idea of what he is. So that's what that is, So Rhodey is right. That's out of character for him. It wouldn't be out of character for me, but he's not me, see. So good call on Rhodey's part. When I redid the book in the Days of the Dead graphic novel, Diego has none of that, He's just like, it's that, he doesn't care. It's that carefree, that childlike innocence. Anyway, I wanted to share that because every time I see that panel, I hear Rhodey, hey, why would he do that? Why is he dressing up then if he doesn't want to be seen? Good point. So here's there's one of the gods, Tezcatlipoca. You see him looking through the storm cloud, foreshadowing. And like I said, he gets hit by lightning. The car gets hit by lightning. The car crashes. He's no longer in the car, right? He's got summoned up to where the gods are. But to the world at large, like, hey, the car's an accident. He's missing. We don't know where he's at. Chapter 2, where in the world is Diego de la Muerte, or the gods must be crazy. The old double title trick. So he was borrowing the car from his friend Isaac. Here's his friend Isaac looking at an Ed Wood film, Glenn or Glenda, Bela Lugosi, Tell Me Dragon. Look that film up if you don't know Ed Wood. So I'm a big fan, so I thought I'd make Isaac. Isaac's a big film buff, so yeah, use whatever film knowledge I have and put it on him. So he finds out, the cop tells him, hey, we found your car and it's no one's in it and it crashed and it's what's going on. And he's like, oh, that was my friend was in there. So he calls the other friends. Remember, all the other friends stayed home that night. He has to call him, tell him what happened. Hey, Diego's missing. The car's been wrecked. And Zach's feeling a little down. And then we transition. Zach's looking in the mirror, not in the mirror. He's looking at the TV screen, the black TV screen, and you see a little bit of his reflection, but it kind of morphs. Just a transition to Diego. Diego waking up, doesn't know where he's at. He thinks he's at the party. He thinks he's, maybe hungover, even though he doesn't drink. He's confused, but he literally thinks, why would he think he's in the Aztec land of the dead, right? Hello, is anybody out there? And then coming out of the darkness is our god of death, Mictlantecutli. And he still thinks he's at the party. He thinks that's a costume someone's wearing. Man, you are definitely going to win that costume contest. So again, he doesn't know that he has been summoned up to Mictlan, the land of the dead. And then the light show starts. The flames turn on. He sees this whole chamber, and now he's kind of start freaking out. And then he gets thrown in front of this other god. So at this point, I think most of us will start thinking, wait a minute, I'm not in Kansas anymore, or East LA. This is the other god in the story, Tezcatlipoca. There's two gods I'm using for my origin, for my storyline. The god of death and Tezcatlipoca, the god of destiny. So they both summoned him to Mictlan. They both had to use their power to bring him in. Mictlantecutli's scheme is to send him back to Earth as an avatar, as a reaper of souls, right, for him. So we got to have an old-fashioned heart sacrifice. And of course, there's this little thing between the gods. There's kind of a little double cross, but you have to read that, right? I don't want to spoil the whole thing. And there's our obsidian blade, and this is one of my favorite pages to have drawn because it's just so visceral and bloody and gory, and it's a highlight, I think, of the story. Obviously, again, how do you show this? I never showed the thing going right into him, but I do show the god of death reaching into his chest cavity and pulling his heart out. So all this little, the little multiple splatter was, I literally got a toothbrush I put ink on the toothbrush and just flicked it on, and that's how you get the splatter effect. And then in here I went in with some white paint, for the ribs, and then just a couple of lines there and some more white to show the heart a little better in the hand. And then he drops the heart in this jar that's got Lepoca's holding. And then, of course, again, character design. How do I show, El Muerto has this white skull face design. So his makeup, the skull face makeup, god of death reaches over and basically fuses it to him permanently. So that's why he's walking around with this white skull face that he needs to later cover up with skin color makeup. So again, I designed the character with the skull face and the mariachi suit, and now I kind of reverse engineer why is he wearing that all the time. So that's how I came up with the idea. Again, he's not a traditional superhero where he makes a costume for himself to hide himself. He kind of has to hide himself. He has to cover the fact up that he is El Muerto, and he has to, assume an identity as a Diego de la Muerte, or, a human-looking identity. Montage scenes are always fun to do. Again, I cover this in detail in the other video. I'm not trying to make you watch the other video, but I would think, if you're watching this one, you might be interested in the other one, where it goes really more in depth. So yeah, now they're gonna send him back to Earth, and then crack a lightning, and they send him a year later though, right? Like in Day of the Dead, someone's passed away. We have a thing on November 2nd. A year later, we do it again. So I wanted like that time separation from his friends. Also, he's been gone a year. So there's that as well. And he gets sent back down to Los Angeles, boom, and he ends up in this park. Fred Blassie Park, I called it, after the legendary King of Man, the wrestler Fred Blassie, who I think passed away in the 90s. But he had a career since, I guess, the 60s, 70s, 80s, maybe even the 50s. Anyway, he's pretty iconic guy. So thought I'd name a park after him here in Los Angeles. And you know, Diego he's at the park, goes into the restroom, tries to wash off the makeup, and that's when he realizes, and the reader, okay, this was permanent, his face. So he has a white face with these skull markings on it. Yeah, just, you know, checking his black eyeballs, trying to rub off the little teeth there, and I'm screwed. You know, he's checking his pulse because he remembers what happened to him throwing on that altar, and now he's like, "Estoy muerto, I'm dead." Like he's kind of realizing what they do to me. They sent me back, and I'm a zombie. You know, I listen to a lot of music when I'm drawing. I mean, I have to have music on because if I don't, I get distracted with the outside world. You know, right? You hear a siren, you hear a dog barking, or someone talking. You know what I mean? So for me, like, how do I block it out? I put on music, either songs, you know, rock songs, pop songs, whatever, or soundtrack music. You know, when I drew this, I'm not sure if it was playing at that moment, but you know, Blue Moon was a very the song I played a lot. And I was probably thinking of that when I drew that. He's walking down the street there. So I'm sure you've heard Blue Moon, one of the many versions of it out there. It's an old, 50s song. So like I said, he's got you know, he comes back to Earth. All he's wearing is his mariachi suit. He's carrying the jacket over his shoulder. He walks in the store. It's Day of the Dead. So people think it's, you know, still Halloween weekend. Right, Day of the Dead is what? 2 days after Halloween. So it wouldn't be surprising to see a guy walk in a costume, face makeup. So, you know, whatever money he had on him, he's going to buying some clothes. He's buying some face makeup because he knows he has to cover himself up. That's what, yeah, he bought a sweatshirt and some pants, and he puts the mariachi suit in this, what I call this, Super Uno Mart. You know, I needed a store, right? I wanted like a big retail, kind of like a Walmart, where he goes buy all the stuff. So I didn't want to use Walmart or Target or any established store, so I had to make up my own. And I tried to give it a name that, like something you probably would find in the East LA area, one of these like knockoff stores. So it's like a giant 99-cent store, but right, the Super Uno Mart. And I like the sound of it. It just sounds, you know, to me it sounds legitimate. Like, yeah, that sounds like something you'd see, you know, like a knockoff store in East LA. So that's what that is, Super Uno Mart. There's some graffiti here, the Snap City Beatniks. You don't see the word beatnik, but at the time, and when I was drawing this book, came out in 98, so drawing it probably 96, 97, 98. I was already well into reading Madman by Mike Allred. I think he was already doing the Dark Horse series, but before that he did a series, the initial series he did at Tundra, if I remember. And then I think he did something at Kitchen Sink Press with Madman. But anyway, the Snap City Beatniks were in, you know, you'd see them in the book, and I just thought that'd be good for graffiti on here. This is a nice shot. You know, he's walking under the light at night in the park. The shadow casts the skeleton. Just a visual, nice little visual thing. It's not that he doesn't cast he doesn't really cast a skeleton shadow, but as an artist, you can play around with visual motifs. So that's always fun to do. And excuse me, give me a second here. Yes, the dry mouth thing, right, as you're talking. Yeah, he's just in his head, he's just go, wow, what am I going to do? You know, I got this separation from my friends because now I'm this walking supernatural freak show, so he's not sure what to do, and he can't just go back home. He doesn't want to just go back home. Some people didn't agree with it, and I've heard over the years, why wouldn't he just go back? I go, he's freaked out. He just doesn't want to walk back into his friend's life. Hey, look at me. Plus, for dramatic reason, I can get him out and get him started on some adventures before he goes back home. So how do I get him out of the LA area? Well, he hitchhikes a ride. He hitchhikes a ride here by this guy. down in Mexico, because this guy just happens to be going to Mexico late at night for an art show. Yeah, this guy's an artist, so he's going down an art show to Baja, so he hitches a ride with him. See, all the paintings in the back of the van. He is an artist. So that's how the story ends, right? Fiend. No, that's not that Doors song, Break On Through the Other Side. I wouldn't do that without authorization. So some other song that has the lyrics Break On Through. And then the little motif with his sunglasses, which he wears to cover his black eyeballs. The reflection on there kind of morphs into the Muerto logo. And that's the end of the story. That was the first El Muerto comic. So that was just the basic, probably like the first half of the origin story. So, like I said, after putting this out a couple of years later, I decided to reprint it. And that bought me more time, right? Because then I had a couple of years to sell this. But then it was time to do a new story. So that's what this El Muerto mishmash is. Like I said, I've done these in the interim. These short stories I did. But it's time to hey, I got to continue the El Muerto story. So that's what Dead Forever is. So for the purpose of El Muerto Origins, I didn't reprint all these short stories, only the relevant El Muerto storyline. So remember, he ended up in the van, and now the van is driving down to Mexico. So, I used to go to Comic-Con San Diego a lot. From LA down to San Diego, take the 5, and you always pass by the San Onofre nuclear reactors. So yeah, I mean that was an easy thing to throw in there, right? Yeah, they're gonna be driving past that. So what I used this story for was because it was some years since the previous issue. He's just reflecting on what happened. He's kind of going over in his head, and you're hearing his thoughts about it too, which is kind of nice. In retrospect, right? He's thinking what happened, and he's not sure what this is. Are they real gods, or what? Very text heavy, that's for sure. Yeah. Oh, I gotta share something. My friend Rafael Navarro, who some of you probably know, about both of us. He does his own comic, Sonambulo. This was back in 2004, maybe 2003 when I was drawing it, but published 2004. But yeah, we were already friends for some years, and he was doing his own comics. But I remember I asked him to help out with inking just to speed this along. I inked the figures, but if I remember, just looking at this, I think he inked this stuff, probably the background. I think, yeah. And then I think that's the only thing he inked. I'm not sure if he inked this part of it, but maybe not, because I always try to do the figure work. Anyway, just wanted to throw that in there as a little tidbit. So yeah, he's just reminiscing. He's kind of going over his childhood. There's a lot of stuff in here is what I didn't cover in the origin story. I wanted to really show what his childhood was like. He grew up watching this film, which I made this film up. It's called Los Muertos También Lloran. The Dead Also Cry. I think it's based on the title, at least. There's like the Spanish soap opera, which is still running. I just ran across it the other day. Los ricos también lloran. The rich also cry. So back in 98, or when I did this 2004, that must have been around. But yeah, so I thought Los Muertos también lloran. It's supposed to be like this classic black and white Mexican B film from the 60s, maybe even the 70s. So as a kid, he saw that. He saw this guy, this zombie in his mariachi outfit. So I think that's what inspired him to dress like that for Day of the Dead years later. And this is where I introduced this concept, the afterlife contract. Him and his friends Isaac Silver, Zach, when they were kids, they did this contract where Isaac came up with it. These are kids, by the way. When one of them dies, they promise to, wherever they go, to come back and tell the other guy what it was like. Pretty dark young kids here, but so that's what the afterlife contract is. I wanted to do that because it sets things up for Isaac, and Diego, after what happens to him. Like, does he come back? And can I report to Isaac what actually happens? So I don't know where that idea came from. I just thought it was something, something kids would do, and at least my kids here, kind of maybe weird, little dark thinking kids. So we're learning about Diego, how he was into art and Aztec art, and learning about his culture and stuff. Thought it'd be interesting that he really be into the Aztec mythology, the ancient Mexican ways of the Mexica and such, and then he ends up getting, literally transformed by the gods into this Aztec zombie. Little rumination on, made him an altar boy growing up, because one of the things I wanted to explore with El Muerto, one of the things that really helped me, really pushed me to do it, was I wanted to explore the whole idea of identity and faith and religion. And, he's like this traditional Mexican Catholic growing up, and even as a young adult. And he's into studying ancient Aztec, ancient Mexican history and such. But what happens now that these things overlapped? He literally was transformed by Aztec gods into this new thing. So I wanted to set that up, because I think that's such an interesting dramatic dilemma to explore in a character, and it helps me work out my own issues with that whole history. So that's why I decided to make him, a Mexican Catholic growing up, and he's turned into this Aztec zombie. So, and that's stuff I'm exploring all the time in the comic, and like I said, to try to bounce that around in my own head. I wanted to talk about his girlfriend Maria, which we never saw in the first book, because they broke up before his whole incident with the Aztec gods. But very important relationship for him, and the whole reason I introduced. I mean, I told this to people before. Why bring the ex-girlfriend into it, or why show this past with her, unless you should figure out she's probably going to show up again in the book. So that's what that is, exploration of that. Also, the panels, I should mention, as an experiment, because this is like a reflective story. It's just him in his head going through the events, what happened. As you see, I did full splash pages, full page panels. This is more traditional, multiple panels. But 2 panels. I just wanted to, establish vignettes. Here's him and Zach growing up. Him at the museum. Him at the church. Him walking the side streets of Whittier, the back streets. So it was intentional to not do it as a more like formally structured, multiple panel pages, just like pinup pages, whatever you want to call it. Again, 2 and 2. And so a lot of reflecting on Maria, him and Zach. This is always nice to do these surreal images that, right out of Salvador Dali or Steve Ditko, Jim Steranko, Jim Starlin, Jack Kirby, naming some various comic book artists who would delve into this type of, world building and such. It's always fun to draw, because you don't have to worry about perspective. Things are upside down, sideways, and there's like graphic images, or whatever, throw in crosses, throw in Aztec symbols. I got a thing for eyeballs. I always like to see the floating eyeballs. Back to the car ride in the van, and they're driving down to Mexico, and that's where that one ends. So that was 2004. and 2008, I did the it was time to continue the story. Again, it's a very slow process. I wasn't knocking these out monthly, not even yearly. It was, like I said, I was learning comics. I was learning how to be a publisher and such, and I had the time thing all whacked out, I'll be honest. But before I did this book, I had started doing other books too, though. I had other ideas I wanted to put out. I did a comic called The Man Swamp. I may have put out The Coma, maybe after this. Anyway, I was doing some other comics here and there. And at the time, I was working a full-time job in retail too. 40 hours. A lot of people have full-time jobs and, come home and knock out the comics. But yeah, for me, working those years really, definitely slowed my pace down. But whatever. So here's the 3rd issue of El Muerto. So this was going to be Dead and Confused. I knew it was going to be like the big chunk of it, so it was going to be part 1 and part 2. So this is part 1. And I'll explain at the end where part 2 is. So, I'm telling the story where we left off Diego. He was driving down to Mexico. So I wanted to check in back with the gods. This is Tezcatlipoca's, floating obsidian pyramid. And again, in this weird, dimensional world. There's a feathered serpent, another eyeball. And there's our guy. A lot of, he was inspired a lot by, well, actually the original, mythological character, as I understood it. But also, I gave him this throne chair with this obsidian mirror at top, and he has an obsidian foot. From what I read, his foot was replaced in the old Aztec days or the codices with like a mirror, and sometimes they draw it. At least the drawings I've seen, literally like a mirror on instead of a foot. But I thought, it looked kind of awkward. I thought, especially if he stood up, he'd have like a mirror here. I just made his foot. He's got a prosthetic, I guess you can call it, but made out of obsidian, a black obsidian foot carved out of stone. And then they would mention that he have a thing on his head or his headdress like a mirror. But I thought, well, if it's above him, it'll be his throne. So I was also thinking of that Jack Kirby character Metron from the New Gods. Remember Metron in his Mobius chair? So I thought he'd be sitting on this stone throne with the obsidian mirror above him, and then he has his foot replaced with one. And of course, he's called Smoking Mirror, Tezcatlipoca. So the foot would smoke, and in the smoke he can see images, So here he sees the car, see the van is taking shape, and there it is. So he can see across time and space, so he's looking in on Diego. So here, the van comes to this intersection here. Tijuana, Mexico, Camino Malpaso, Bad Pass Road. Where I got that from? Malpaso. Clint Eastwood, actor, but, director. He's been directing for 40 years. He started a production company pretty early on in his career, probably in the late 60s, early 70s. And I guess he said his agent said that was a bad step to do, which is kind of weird. Like, why wouldn't you want to have your own production company? So Clint, as a nod to that, he called his company Malpaso, Bad Step. And it hasn't been a bad step because he's had a tremendous career for the last, 40 years or longer as a director, producer, So anyway, Malpaso, I'm a big Clint Eastwood fan. Malpaso was always in the back of my head, just that phrase. And I go, okay, the Bad Step Road, Camino Malpaso. I pull from everywhere for names, places, story fragments, story ideas. But in the end, the story is yours. It's mine, the El Muerto, the characters and everything. But I think we're all influenced by everything in our lives. So this guy reluctantly, it's like, are you sure you want to get off here? And he's like, yeah. He's not really sure exactly what he's doing. I know he wants to go meet a curandero down in Tijuana. Maybe a curandero, medicine man can help him. So this guy takes off in the middle of nowhere, right? Camino Malpaso, and then he just starts walking with his little bag with his suit in there, and then he's not paying attention, and car hits him, bump, ka-thump. The car stops, and the guy's smashed on the floor, right? Got a little rip in his pants there, and the clothes sticking out, and there's a boot. The guy's panicking, feels horrible that he wasn't paying attention. But Diego, check this out. He's already dead, right? He's undead. But if he gets like a traumatic blow, puts him out, and I guess you can say it kills him again. But he resurrects himself. That's one of his powers. He can self-regenerate, self-resurrect over and over and over again. So he's freaked out. I mean, he doesn't know what he is still, and so everything that happens to him is going to freak him out. Talking about panel design. So this story is a more traditional panel layout, multiple panels per page. I can't tell you why. When I laid it out, when I sketched it out, I end up liking what it is. I'm not sure why I did the curved panel where it curves along here, and I just think the thing just works nice, right? Like he's framed nice in that panel, and then these things. I don't know. It's just a lot of stuff is just, for me at least, it's very intuitive. I think for most people, I mean, there's nothing scientific. There's no reason it has to be this way, and there's no reason it has to be just straight lines, traditional panels. It just worked good. But for the most part, I do like, just regular squared off panels, whether it's squares or rectangles and such. But sometimes I want to mix up the scene and maybe give it a little more energy or something. So there's no set pattern like, oh, every third page has to be this very interesting, unique panel layout. It's all just comes from somewhere inside my head or somewhere. Well, as long as all that matters at the end is that the comic's done and it's got a narrative flow, and hopefully it interests the reader. You know what I mean? That's if you're brand new to comics, don't get don't get caught up with like, oh, do I have to throw in a very crazily designed panel layout every couple of pages? It's just make your decision and stick with it and go with it. That's all I could say. That's what I was doing when I did that. So his friend Isaac, his best friend, it's been a year. Diego's been gone. Isaac's very sad, obviously. I wanted to establish that Isaac is not having a good time coping with this, as it happens with people. He's drinking too much, which is not a good way at all to handle loss or stress. But it's a very real thing. So again, I told you he was a filmmaker. I mean, he's got tons of videos, recordings of him and Diego, and here's Diego in his later years where he found this afterlife contract that they wrote years before. So yeah, Diego, Zach just heads back off into his bedroom, slams the door. Yeah, I want to establish that early on. Like, okay, Zach, of all the friends, is not handling it well, because that could provide a lot of great dramatic moments, and give Zach a certain story arc, and Diego in dealing with Zach. So back in Mexico, Senor Lopez, named after my high school art teacher, Mr. Lopez, my first art teacher I had out of high school, in college, I should say, my college teacher. He opened me up a lot to art. I mean, he was the first time I was studying under, outside of high school, under like, wow, an artist. I'm learning about painting, life drawing, things like that. It doesn't look like that, but I wanted to give him a name. So Mr. Lopez is as good as any. So Mr. Lopez works for the circus, Mondragon's Circus and Festival of Freaks. Ta-da. So he tells Diego, hey, you know what? If you need a place to stay for a while, you can maybe even work here for a bit, whatever, until you move on. So, I needed Diego to kind of settle in somewhere. Again, me as the writer of the story. Yes, he's down in Mexico, but he's got to settle in somewhere as he tries to figure things out. So, working in a circus, and there's a purpose. There's a reason it's a circus, as we'll see later. Again, he's got some private time in his own little cab there, his little trailer. He's checking his scar, trying to wash off the makeup. Doesn't wash. It's not makeup. Can't wash off the skull design. And again, reflecting. This guy's very self-reflective. No, I mean, what's he gonna do? Sit there and play a video game? No, he's trying to, again, in his head, what's going on, what happened to me, why me, type of thing. Yeah, I love this image where he's got a rosary. Mr. Lopez gave it to him, took it off his rear view mirror. Here, Diego, take this. I have another dozen or so. Remember, a man who prays has hope, because without hope, how can a man truly be alive? A quote from Mr. Lopez. But I love this scene. Like, here's this zombie. He's, as he's thinking, he's also reciting the rosary, doing the rosary, praying the rosary. So that's what this first image was. Because at one point I got this image, I colored it for something, just to share it online or something. So then that's why this is a grayscale image of it. But I don't know, I just like the idea of a zombie, praying a rosary. I don't think that's ever been done before in movies or comics. So if it has, okay. But if it hasn't, that's kind of cool too. So members of the circus is knock on the door. This young girl is there. He realizes he almost exposed himself to her, his face at least. Yeah, I could better word that right. He's wearing pants. He shuts the door. She's like, come on out. Come meet everybody. So his little bag there, right, is super Uno Mart. He's got his makeup. He's got to cover up and then put on his that sweatshirt. And we meet the circus folks, right? The big heavy guy. This tall guy, Pedrito el Perito, Pedro the dog boy. And then we get to meet Carolina. We haven't seen her before. I mean, what she looks like. Just a very small young girl, but she doesn't have eyeballs. She has little strands of flesh, where the eyeball would be. Circus freaks, quote unquote. And that's the end of that story. Continued in chapter 2, Death for Breakfast, or La Vida y Muerte de Juan Diego. Yeah, I took this from, I saw Mike already use this in his Madman comics, the early ones. But before that, I'm sure this is where he got it from. Was it the Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoons from the 60s? They would do like short chapters, like I guess two 10-minute segments connected together, but one would end and they'd say, okay, next episode, blah, blah, blah. Or they'd have two titles. And that always stuck to, I always thought that was an interesting little motif or gag, whatever you want to call it. So then I saw Mike Allred was using it. I go, well, I still want to do it too. So that's what that was. Okay, so it's the end of the chapter, not the end of the issue. So again, we're flipping back from Mexico to Whittier, where he's from. Diego's from, where I'm from as well too, near. It's east of East LA. So, a flip phone, right? This was drawn in 2008. Flip phones were still a thing. In fact, that's probably the one I had. Zach wakes up. He's got a copy of the book, The Kid Stays in the Picture by Robert Evans, one of the producers of The Godfather. And he's got a Man Swamp comic. Yeah, like I told you, that's my comic that I did, Man Swamp. Thought I'd throw that on his little desktop, his desk there. So Susie's there, just, in the morning, visiting him. Susie Q, Susie Quintana, and one of the other cast members. I want to give Diego his little cast of friends. They'll all be part of the story as it goes forward. A bottle of booze hidden under the paper there. I mean, all the friends know Zach's been having a very bad time. They know he's drinking too much. He looks like crap there, right? His face kind of ragged and bags under the eyes and such. So they're all pulling for Zach, as well as mourning Diego's disappearance or loss. Meanwhile, we cut back to the circus. See more people. That's like what was that character? Not a character, but I guess there was a real circus freak show or performer, like a pinhead. Anyway, that's what that is. This guy with the saggy face, like prune face, I guess. So he's just meeting some of the other characters. This is kind of like the head of these two are like the head of the family, Madre Destina and Tio Chango. This like a big hunchback, and she's like a clairvoyant. She's got these black eyeballs with multiple white pupils, kind of like spider eyes. Senor Lopez sees him. So as Diego's talking to the circus performers, it's a circus freak show, so I guess by default they're circus freaks. But I was one time a few years ago I was speaking to a group of college students at Modesto College up in Northern California. My friend Dr. Teresa Rojas, she teaches my graphic novel in her classes. So I went up there one day to visit the class and answer questions. And I was just talking about these characters, the circus freaks. And this one student, she's like, I don't really like that name, circus freaks. And I thought about it. I go, yeah, no. To me, they're not circus freaks. They're wonderful people. They have these special abilities and whatever appearances that, you know, people call them circus freaks. So I always, you know, I try to refer to them as the circus performers or even the circus family, because they are a family. They've all come together, right? They're all misfits and from everywhere across the world, Mexico, whatever. So yeah, they're basically a family, right? The father figure, the mother figure, the young girl, and all the other, you know, brothers or cousins or whatever. So if I ever call them circus freak, it's from the point of view of the bad people, like these guys. So, you know, Diego's talking to everybody, and then at the office, the oficina, see a silhouette, and we see he's being looked at, spied on by this terrible the guy who runs the freak show, Dr. Killian Cassidy. Yeah, just an abhorrent man, a drunk, mean-spirited, very bad. And then these triplets. You know, I got the idea for this. I don't think I shared this in the other video. I kind of gave him that Pulp Fiction look. Vince Vega, you know, just the black suit, the thin tie, and the like slick back hair and mullet style. But they're triplets. I'm a huge James Bond fan, and I use a lot of Bond references in my stuff. Not in the fact that I'm trying to do a spy story. It's not that at all. But just things I've read about or production stories I've heard about. So there was this rough draft of a screenplay, The Spy Who Loved Me, the 1977 film with Roger Moore. But I read, you know, I was reading this book on the making of it, and in an early draft, the screenwriter came up with these characters called, they were triplets called Tic Tac Toe, and they ended up not using them in the final film, you know. But you know, that's again, that stuck in my head, like, oh, the idea of triplets. So these guys, yeah, they're brothers. They're the Kill brothers. There's a Thrill, Spill, and Chill. It doesn't really matter who's who, right? Him, Thrill, he could be Thrill. It doesn't matter. Thrill, Spill, and Chill, Kill. The Kill brothers. The brothers Kill. So that's why I got to share that. That's where I got the idea for triplets. And they're diminutive people, right? They're very small. They look like probably 8-year-old boys, but they're probably in their 20s and 30s. But they're just, again, they're part of the, you know, that whole circus freak atmosphere. So, you know, again, I'm telling the story. I'm also trying to reveal Diego's abilities. So when he got hit by Mr. Lopez a few pages back, we saw that he can self-regenerate, self-resurrect, whatever. Here, there was an accident where Flaco, the big fat guy, his name's Flaco. Flaco means skinny, if you didn't know. Haha. I guess he tripped in his trailer, and the trailer went forward, and it crushed a little dog. Frida, you know, Catalina's dog. So I didn't show the dog getting crushed, but I did show him Frida's just kind of out. She's actually dead. So Diego reaches to pick her up, unsuspectingly pick her up, and then as he touches her, you get that effect again, that, you know, that X-ray buzzing effect. Bzzz. And guess what? He has just resurrected her. So now we know he has the power to self-resurrect, and anything he touches, any dead thing he touches, it resurrects. He's alive again. Again, he's confused. What the heck? They're not really sure what happened. They didn't see her and touch her and resurrect her. Maybe they thought she wasn't dead, but there she is. Everything's good. Everything's happy. There's Catalina with him, and she's inviting him to a party tonight because it happens to be, remember, it's a year ahead, so it's Day of the Dead now, a year later, and they happen to celebrate it in a big way here at this circus, the circus family, and he mentions to her that that's his actual birthday. Again, the triplets, the Kill brothers, are listening to report back to Mr. Killian what they saw. They saw him resurrect the dog. So yeah, now there's, hey, this guy's got something going on with him. He's a super high level freak. Back in the trailer, Diego's washing off his cover-up makeup, right? So he looks like a human. Washes it off. He's gonna get ready to go to this Day of the Dead party. So it's appropriate to have the skull face. But I love this little scene here. So he sees a cockroach, smashes it. There it is in pieces. I hope that's not too gory for people. He touches the pieces, and the cockroach, rejuvenates, is resurrected, and comes back to life. He's just like, what the heck is going on here? So yeah, put it on his suit, put on his mariachi suit. Again, he's going to the Day of the Dead festival at the circus, so he gets back in his costume. And he walks out, and yeah, establishing that, it's a big party, big festival that night at the circus, so they bring out all their Day of the Dead decorations and, ornaments and such. And we cut to, so then we jump cut to Miklan, because here's the god of death talking to his, a seer of his, he's not happy what happened because Diego went back to Earth, but he's not reaping souls for him because Tezcatlipoca did something different. Now he sees what it is. He's given him the power to resurrect instead of the power to take away. So Tezcatlipoca pulled a fast one on him. He's not happy about it. Little minions show up. Like any true despot, he's impatient with the minions, and this one pisses him off, so he just, blinks them out of existence, or he dissolves them to dust. And then we see where, he also has a pyramid, but you find out here. So I got this shot of these skulls. The smoke is coming out, the smoke from the fire here. And you start pulling back, you see the skulls and these bones. And then you realize it's the steps of the pyramid. And this pyramid is made up of, millions of skulls and bones. And there's a zombie vulture there. This is the land of the dead. This is my version of it, Miklan. And that was the end of it, to be continued in part 2, right? I said this was part 1. Remember, this was part 1. So what happened in 2008, I did part 1. And then I started doing those other books I told you about. There's a whole bunch of other ones I've done, which I'll have to do videos on all those. The Coma, Les Voodoo Sans, and such. Again, I didn't get back to El Muerto for some time. So I was doing these other books. That's the thing, I'm my own publisher, so I didn't have a publisher telling me, or an editor, hey, you know what, get back to the comic. But, I did these other comics, but whatever. So when the time came for me to finally do part 2, I drew part 2, started drawing, continuing from here, the whole climax of the circus and all that. And then I was going to print these 3 issues with the new one. But then I go, you know what? I drew all these new pages, and the art and the story doesn't match up to the original stuff from, years before, 10 years earlier. So I redrew the first story, and I redrew this segment, Dead Forever, or at least the part that encompasses that. And then I redrew a lot of part 1 even. I redrew a lot of this book. The one we just looked at, I redrew a lot of it. And then I put those new pages together with the part 2 version, part of it. And that's what this is. Days of the Dead. Came out in 2018. So, in fact, I can show you, like we left off somewhere here in the circus. So like I said, I redrew some of the circus pages. See when he's doing the rosary, a lot more detail in the background and such. So that was redrawn, the part where Susie meets Zach. And then when he wakes up and Catalina calls him. Let me tell you something. You notice this? I did use some of the original pages in the story. Look, let me share this. Here's the part where he wakes up in his room. And Catalina's calling him, and he's getting his makeup to put on. And he goes out to meet the circus family. Here, he's in his room. She's calling him. So this was redrawn. Look, if we compare them. Let's see if I can get these in the camera. I want you guys to see this. So these two, so this is the original one. This is the one redrawn. So it's just different layouts, different perspectives and such. But then they both, the original, and then the new story, I kept that page. And I did that with several of the pages where I didn't redraw them. I just incorporated into, because I think, to me, like, it held up art-wise and such. And sometimes I just thought I really nailed it the first time around. So maybe I'll do another video, because this is already getting longer, comparing, you know, Days of the Dead storyline to how it differs from the original one. But maybe just buy both books, and then you can compare them. Anyway, let me put this in the shot, because this is the one we focused on today. So that's really it. Again, I want to just give a walkthrough on this Origins book, and just detailing some of the stories behind and the process behind the 3 original El Muerto comics. So thanks so much. I'm gonna call it a video now. So again, check the link down below. The Kickstarter is still running for the complete graphic novel of the second El Muerto book, Casa del Diablo. It runs till Christmas Eve, so this video should be at least up about a little more than a week before that happens. So check the link down below if you want to get the new book. And I'm also reprinting Days of the Dead with a new cover, and I'm also reprinting El Muerto Origins with a new cover. And they're all branded. You'll see it with the 25th anniversary logo, because next year, 2023, El Muerto turns 25 years. So I've been doing this character for 25 years. So there'll be a new graphic novel next year, book 2 in the series. I have 10 planned, if you can believe it or not. So anyway, check out the link to the Kickstarter. Check out the link to the other videos if you want to see the detailed behind the scenes on the original Days of the Dead. And I'm looking at the actual comic book pages, so you can check those out. So thanks, everybody. Subscribe, hit the like button, please, and share the video. I appreciate it. Thanks.